Welcome to class. I'm Trevor, and I post D&D videos every week, generally on Wednesdays. In this video, I'm doing my first impressions for the newest published material from MCDM, Beastheart and Monstrous Companions. Okay, so before I jump into it, this is just going to be first impressions. I'm not going to flip through the entire book. I'm not going to show stat blocks. You will not know how to run exactly how to run these companions or how to play a Beastheart just by watching this video, and that is intentional. I really think you should buy this PDF. I'm not going to pull any punches. I purchased this with my own money. I really like the stuff that MCDM comes out with, and this is well worth it. Please, if you're considering it, if you are a player that likes to have pets in-game, obviously, or a DM that is fine with allowing like optional classes and wants to try to run a system like this, I cannot encourage it enough. I cannot speak positively of this enough. I paid for this. It's just that good. And I'll get into the specifics right now. All right, so this video is going to be broken into 3 parts. And first I'll talk about the companions. Then I'll talk about the Beastheart. And finally, I'll just wrap it up with like general miscellany. So the companions in this book are rules for pets in 5e. And they're much needed. There's no current system, at least not a clear one, and I've been running 5e for a while, for how pets should work in a 5th edition game. Now, this book takes monster stat blocks and modifies them, pretty severely modifies them, to make them reasonable to run as pets. And there are a lot of other changes that are done, right? So like in this book, there are stat blocks for a lot of different monsters, but companion version of these monsters. All the way from Basilisk to Warg, there are a lot of options. My favorite ones are probably the Gelatinous Cube, the Mimic, or this guy, Mort. They're incredible. The way that these stat blocks are made, they scale with the player that is controlling the creature. And that it's done so deftly, I guess. Like, it just feels... to be clear, I haven't been able to run one of these yet, but as a DM looking at this material, I have very few questions. And the questions that I do have, I'll bring those up at the end. But I have very few questions for how this would work, and it seems pretty well balanced. I mean, I know that they do a lot of testing through their Discord, and I know MCDM, the quality of the stuff that they come out with, I'm normally a pretty big fan of it. And this is true for these kind of pet rules as well. Now, the additional kind of thing that I think is really important to keep in mind when it comes to these pets is this ferocity mechanic that they have. So they work on the same turn as their caregiver, and it's a bonus action to get the pet to use an attack. But there are different kind of levels of attacks, and those scale with player level, but they also scale with a resource called ferocity. Now, ferocity is supposed to essentially get across the wild nature of these monstrous pets. And companions gain ferocity based on a d4 roll and the number of hostile creatures around them during combat, at the start of a combat round. Now, this is awesome because this ferocity becomes a resource that can be used to use the more powerful attacks from these pets. But if they get too high on their ferocity, they can go into a rampage. They can go wild. And that, some players might not be okay with that. Some players might not want their companion to attack their party. And I can understand the reservations about that. But I think it keeps the monstrous nature of these creatures in check. And if you don't want that as an option or to happen necessarily as frequently, the class, the Beastheart, is the exact perfect fit for a player that wants to be connected to their pet in that way, right? So even if you are not planning on using the class itself, I think the rules for the Monstrous Companions are good enough. And I am stoked to see what the community comes up with as additional Monstrous Companions, because I know that it'll happen, and I'm really severely looking forward to it. Now let's get into the Beastheart. All right, so the Beastheart is a new class for 5e, and it is a dexterity or strength plus wisdom based class. They have a d8 hit die, and they are essentially naturalists, I guess you could call it that, right? So the recommended class in the quick build is Outlander, if that gives you a mental space to play in. And these characters characters of this class, are directly linked with their beast, with their companion. Now, there is this optional way to kind of change out which companion you have, and it's limited in such a way that I think is done really well. So you're not going to have players that are just cycling through a bunch of different pets, because that doesn't really fit the spirit of this class. One thing that I do really, really like is in this book, it talks about the kind of inspiration for fiction of this class. And it gives some ideas like How to Train Your Dragon or the Golden Compass series, and that kind of very close connection that an individual has with their pet or with their companion. And that comes across to a T. This is not Ash Ketchum with his like menagerie of Pokemon. That's a different thing. This is mano a mano. This is one person and the pet that they kind of link or bond with. Like I said, it's either dexterity or strength plus wisdom. The dexterity is more common because these are generally going to be ranged combatants. And the melee version or the melee kind of component is going to be from the Monstrous Companion. Now, one of the things that makes the Beastheart special is they get primal exploits. These remind me a lot of Warlock invocations. And I love it because there's a lot of modularity to it. Now, a lot of these, what they are is a resource that feels very similar to spellcasting, but this is not a spellcasting class. Instead, they use ferocity. They use the resource generated by their companion to channel their abilities. Now, a lot of these are like kind of crowd control or crowd effect style abilities, but it's a long list. There's a big range of abilities and triggers for these abilities. But it's very interesting, and it really does hit the nail on the head for that bond between the caregiver and the companion. They're able to funnel this fury coming from the companion, and it works, and it's awesome. Now, the subclasses for this are called Primal Bonds, and there are 5 Primal Bonds to choose from: Ferocious, Hunter, Infernal, Primordial, and Protector. Most of these bonds give additional exploits that can be gained, and additional ways to use your companion's ferocity. Like the shorthand way that I kind of thought about it is Ferocious feels kind of barbarian-ish. Hunter feels kind of like a ranger, or like the Beastmaster Ranger. Infernal feels somewhat warlock, or at least devilish or demonish. Primordial is it's like the naturalist one, maybe druid, but it's just like someone who's very deeply connected with nature. And then Protector feels like a tank or a paladin. So if like you want to rush in there with your beast, that is more like the Protector subclass or Protector bond for this class. This class is ripe with options. And in that way, it reminds me of the Battlemaster Fighter, but it's a lot more, or it's just different, right? Like it's not just options that affect you, and where the Battlemaster Fighter has maneuvers, this has almost spellcasting-like effects given the resource of ferocity that's coming from the pet. Now, there are obviously like additional benefits to being a Beastheart when it comes to interacting with a companion, and that's really awesome. I don't know. It all just slots together perfectly, and I would feel comfortable running a companion for a player who wasn't a Beastheart, but I think running a companion like running a Beastheart specifically with a companion, I think would be that much more fun. So let's get into the general miscellany before I wrap up the video. There is a section of magic items at the end of this book. There is also a narrative written by Matt Colville. The magic items are designed to kind of flesh out the companion system, options for like armor for the companions, magic items specifically for a Beastheart. And I need to look through it more closely, but I'm glad that it's included. I'm very excited about it. I'm excited to see what I could tweak for my games, even though I don't currently have companions or a Beastheart in any of my home games. The art throughout this book is legitimately some of the best art I've ever seen in a published D&D anything. It is close to worth picking this up just for the art alone, and the content is also top-notch. So keep that in mind, especially if you're on the fence about getting this. I do have one lingering question, and I need to look into it further, but that's the interaction, or if there is an interaction between like a companion and the like mounted combat, or specifically a cavalier fighter. I have a player who's playing a cavalier fighter right now, and some of the pet specific elements feel a little bit like a letdown. They feel a little bit flavorless or hollow, especially after reading through this supplemental material. So I want to try to find a way and do some snooping to kind of merge those things. And I think it would enrich that player's experience a lot. And I'm sure that it exists, or I don't know, I'm assuming that it exists somewhere, or at least it's a question that's been asked, but I know that I'm wondering it because I think this is a lot better than what I'm currently dealing with in my weekly campaign. All right, so those are my first impressions of the Beastheart and Monstrous Companions material from MCDM. It's really worth picking up. It's great. I know that like I sound like a shill, but like it's just every point of this book, when I first got it, I was a little bit overwhelmed. I'm going to be honest. Like, I bought this because I love the stuff that MCDM puts out. Matt Colville was a big inspiration for me starting this channel. And I bought it and I was like, maybe I won't use this, but like, I want to support them anyway. And I looked through it and I'm like, all right, this seems like a lot. It really wasn't. Like, it didn't take me that long to understand. I kind of slept on it and read through the class. It's not that complicated. And it really, I think, hits the nail on the head for that flavor of a character having a pet. And I'm excited. I really want to see one of my players or myself play a Beastheart at some point in an upcoming campaign. If you have any questions about this supplement, I'm happy to answer them in the comments. If you want me to do further videos on any of this kind of material, I'm happy to do that as well. Typically on the channel, I do homebrew material, often inspired by Magic the Gathering, and I'm happy to do a kind of class inspiration video for the Beastheart inspired by Magic cards. But as I always say, be safe, make smart life choices.